Good morning, students. In this video, we deals with John Milton's sonnet on his blindness. So, let's start it. First, we have to start it with the central idea of the poem. Milton, the great poet of England, had become blind when he had hardly crossed half the span of his life. The whole world appeared to him dark and gloomy. The poetic power which had been bestowed upon him by God seemed unless to him, for he could not write poems in his state of blindness. The heart of the poet was much inclined to write poetry and present to God a true account of his genius, but he was helpless. In this state of blindness, the poet often asked himself whether God required full work from a man who had been deprived of his eyesight. In such moments of questioning, doubt, and uncertainty, patience came to the help and rescued the poet. Patience consoles the poet that God did not require to return of his gifts. His heart was kind and merciful. Thousands of angels were at his command, and they did him service by passing over land and sea. Those persons who patiently bore the various sufferings and sorrows of their lives were also good servants of the God. They were equally devoted of God who prayed to him in silence and waited for his mercy. Milton also wrote many sonnets, of which the one is entitled as On His Blindness is the most popular. The poet felt seriously perturbed at the loss of his eyesight. This calamity rendered a death blow to all his aspiration to write poetry in praise of his creator. He considered it to be a sole mission of his life, but now, when he was blind, he could no longer pursue this mission. The sonnet beautifully reflects the feeling and utter frustration and helplessness which stirred the soul of the poet at this time. Milton was 44 when he lost his eyesight. He expected to live a long life, and so he feels dismayed at the loss of his eyesight at that time when he thinks he has yet to live more than half of his life. He can see no light. There is nothing but darkness which he finds surrounding him on all sides. Therefore, he feels helpless in the suspicious world. He feels grieved as he considered that his poetic talent, with which God has gifted him, will now be rendered useless. The blindness marked the close of the poetic career, the pursuit of which has been the sole mission of his life. He is now a good as dead to the world as a poet, and it is almost unbearable to think that this should have happened at a time when the urge in his urge in him to write poetry in praise of God is growing all the more stronger. What excuses will he make to the Creator for having wasted all his talent? Milton finds himself placed in a situation of a third servant of the parable who had foolishly hoarded the talents and not invested it, and was therefore chilled by his master for his negligence. When such thought begins to torture his soul, the poet indulgently hopes to be spared from the displeasures of God, who he thinks can be so unfair as to expect literary work from a blind. Doubts and fear begin to torment his soul when the poet loses his eyesight. He is afraid lest the god should rebuke him for his negligence of his poetic talent. He feels doubtful if the god should expect such work from a blind man as cannot be done without eyesight. The poet ponders over the questions and feels relieved when patient thought convinces him that God is not so unjust as to expect such a work from a blind man as cannot be done without eyesight. God is unmindful whether or not a man renders him active service, nor does he care if the gift which he has bestowed upon a man are not fully utilized by him. The only thing which he cares for is that a man should completely surrender himself to his will. Those who dutifully resign themselves to the mild punishments inflicted upon them by the God serve him in the best possible manner. God exercises his kingly authority all over the universe, like earthly kings who have a member of attendant already to run extend from them. God too has thousands of angels ready to attendance upon him and to fly skeezily all over the universe to carry out his commands, whereas there are thousands of others who stand silently awaiting his order. The poet says that the latter, who only stand with and wait, render as a good a service unto him as those engaged in active services.